So are we just doing this just for the... All right, my friends, greetings and welcome to DEF CON 34 Payment Village. Just going to give everybody just a second. If anybody else wants to come in, we are streaming and recording if you guys want to see my ugly mug in digital format. So, just want to say once again, thank you for any of our talks. We have a bunch of good demos and CTFs, which the CTF is still in the process of solidifying right now. So please give us just a little bit of time with that. Just in highlight, we have some capture the coins. We have some button making stuff over here for Kids Track and just various fun. We have a really cool ferrofluid demo where we go over magnetic strip and their attacks. We have various professionals dotted in and around the room with our wonderful shirts on that can absolutely answer most of your questions. If you have anything breaking things down, we have varying demos over here on the side and various information on skimmers. We have a fantastic ATM over here that you can actually crash out with malware. Look at and get a good idea of what's happening.
morning, friends. Hi. Hi. There's a time delay between the footage, and I love it.
You're doing the intros today?
We're live. This is on national television, Brittany.
There's our
This is
answer
going to
back.
go down for history. We
Me
can
coming over
fix
here
this in
and
post,
micromanaging.
right?
Me coming over here and micromanaging. They're always like this.
Good morning, DEF CON. We'd like to move on with this very serious presentation. Take over.
Hi there, I'm Levi. I personally engage with an adversary at the worst time of the year, on vacation during the winter holidays. This was a week-long back and forth, and several times I built a new wall, they climbed over it. This presentation will share what a card tester is, what they're getting out of abusing merchants, and the tactics I tried along with the effectiveness of each tactic. I'm speaking from my own experience and not for or on behalf of my current or previous employers. I've also verbally confirmed that I can speak about this incident with the CEO of the merchant where this happened. So what is a card tester? It helps to explain what motivates this adversary. They are a critical slice of the fraud market. They never acquired the cards from the merchant, nor are they spending big on the cards they get. Instead, they have 100,000 garbage grade cards, and they can sell 1,000 known working cards to somebody else for a lot more. The protections you have for low volume fraud won't hold back this kind of threat. Before this, all I had a good oracle. I made a mistake. I thought, if Google is doing it, then I can do it too. When I added my card to my Google Wallet, I saw that they did a $1 authorization to make sure that it was good before a series of convenient purchases with the Google Wallet. Under my leadership, when it came time to revamp our payment gateway integration, I said, let's do that too for sign-in users. Little did I know at the time that this was the behavior that card testers want exactly. The authorization got voided after, so affected parties won't even see anything reach their statement. They might if they have a notification on their app. 8 months later, while on a holiday, updating the mobile applications. Let me share what they were doing. They would create a new account with a random Gmail account that doesn't exist. They would add 9 cards one at a time to the wallet directly with the client API just skirting underneath our 10 means ban, and they would measure the success for each vault operation and wait a few minutes or even an hour before adding another on that session. The adversary likely took probably a man-in-the-middle recording or an HTTP archive of a natural session where the card successfully tokenized, then replayed it back a few times with fresh accounts to verify and that it would work without hitting the IP address limit. They bisected their recording and found the one endpoint that invisibly set the session flag, saying that they were a normal user. After reboot, they started up and saw things work again until I caught them. For each platform, web, Android, and iOS, I set up additional behavior session flags that each platform would independently trigger as additional layers of defense that I could turn on with these feature flags to step up the difficulty. I kept one defense layer in reserve as an alarm-only indicator that kept me apprised of their activity and allowed me to attribute their attacks in the logs to discover their behaviors. They also brought friends. Did you know? A second and third adversary appeared. Their request patterns were notably different, and they had different delays between requests, and they quickly gave up because I guess they didn't share the knowledge about the first layer of difficulty I implemented. Information about the PAN, because it's not actually hash, it's more like an HMAC, would appear across different accounts again and again. So if I gave them rejection on their first card, they knew that the process was broken. Their process evolved to start using the same card for the first tokenization on every batch. And with that, I saw them testing again in New York City until they defeated difficulty level 2 and then set it off in production, and I took advantage of that. I had a way to make things mildly more expensive for them. I could set up a tripwire on the card hash, so if it's used multiple times across different accounts in a short amount of period, then the card hash itself can be burned, and any account attempting to tokenize it will get fake data back and the account will get banned. They'd have to start burning cards if they wanted to keep using this method to vet their production quality. Now, I really should have seen this earlier. They made a really silly design decision in their bot. Every request got a randomly selected residential proxy IP. A session would jump from IP address to IP address between every request, even within the same 10 seconds. So then I realized if somebody's jumping across 3 or more IP addresses before tokenizing, they're likely this bot. I threw an enforcement of difficulty level 2 that they might eventually figure this out. And it would be harder and harder for me to fight back. It was getting too expensive for me to continue this strategy, and I had to turn the tables. I had to make further engagement against me more expensive. I had to put up a wall that would deter them enough to leave me alone. It was Christmas. So I was constrained by the application contract. I could change the web, but the mobile applications were outside of my reach, both in skill and how responsive I would have to be. What's least expensive for me? And most expensive for them. I considered a few options like client-side fingerprinting, the same thing that Cloud CAPTCHAs and Cloudflare Turnstile does, or even computational challenges like Anubis, but that would break the application contract. My only option came down to the account creation step. At the time, it was untapped and frankly ripe for abuse. Random email, random password, and suddenly an authenticated session that can tokenize cards. It was time to change that. Your first thought might be, well, throw a CAPTCHA on it. And I'd say, in the words of Claude, you're absolutely right. Except the app account creation endpoint didn't have a CAPTCHA, and the web account creation endpoint first because it was the fastest thing I could change to halt the attack, and it did. I figured the adversary was using a basic Python script to run the attack. Retooling to support browser automation would push them back further off for more than a day. You need more than browser automation to solve a CAPTCHA, though. Dedicated services exist to solve them for a price of like $1 to $3 per thousand. My objective was to make this more costly in compute to run browser automation and to pay for these seriously sketchy services. Again, this was to buy time so I could implement the quick version of our long-term solution, email verification. They were using made-up Gmail accounts. I briefly matched on the pattern. It was like a UUID at gmail.com and used that to softpad them. But like any other behavioral gate, that didn't last long. It turns out that having a functional email address is a big ask for somebody hoping to cycle through 100,000 credit cards, now limited to 8 cards per minute since they're trying to use a known working card as quality control in each batch. So a one-time passcode over email requires that the adversary have a reliable way to register, raising the cost to continue automated abuse with CAPTCHAs, and more importantly, leaning on email providers to employ effective abuse mitigations. But this did have some casualties. People can't register on our apps anymore, and the email one-time passcode leaves much to be desired. What can we do so that we can react more nimbly next time? Web and mobile apps need a unified account creation flow. Having 3 was too much for me, and the mobile apps are mechanically unable to and could have a JS path forward. Instead, the client can redirect to an app-specific callback URL like myapp://auth signed in and with an access code in the query parameter. It gets a little bit more complicated with proof key for code exchange, which I also recommend implementing. With this, both account creation and authentication can be brought into one flow that can be adapted as needed without reducing functionality or security for our native applications. Still, OTPs suck. But what can we do? I really don't like OTPs. They're phishable, plus social sign-in buttons work through native UI too. You can also skip the web popover if you use their SDKs on the app, as long as you trust the social identity provider, even Amazon, to verify emails. You can let the customer. It is a draft standard that Safari and Firefox won't have implemented anytime soon, but it lets a relying party like you ask for a credential from one of many services at once. And a recap. So I couldn't have gotten through this without a ton of logging, specifically logs that I could correlate over time, IP addresses, sessions, and so on. Payments and account identity need as much data logged as you can safely do while staying PCI compliant. You don't know what you'll need until you're facing an attack. Residential proxies are hard to automatically recognize, and you might get lucky like me and have an adversary where their IP address is switched between every request without them realizing it. Request-based gating won't buy you much time, even less now that adversaries have access to AI agents. While under attack, buy yourself some time and look at your options and see what you can do to make it more expensive to attack you. And once they're gone, maybe make it more expensive to return and keep those alarms on in case somebody starts poking around. Thank you for attending my talk. I'm here volunteering at the Payment Village, so if you have any questions throughout the weekend, I'm here. And if you're curious or want to talk to me, you can reach me at levishuck.com. Sure. Does anybody have questions?
All right, so now it's 12:01 local time. Let's get started with our conversation today with Aidan Quimby. It's going to be over skimmers, shimmers, and you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. This is my latest iteration of my research into payment card skimmers, shimmers, and how they relate to you all. So to give some background, I'm an app, hardware, and ATM hacker. I'm a computer engineer by my background, and I work out of a home lab in Cincinnati, Ohio. The lab has evolved since this picture was taken, but the cat has stayed the same. I previously worked for IBM X-Force Red, and now I work for Coalfire that I joined last year, but I was at X-Force for around 5 years. On the contrary, shimmers are devices that steal chip cards payment data. So they started appearing around 2015 in the US on the rollout of EMV, and they're significantly more complex to develop. So has anybody seen shimmers here? A lot less. So my research is mostly focused on point-of-sale Verifone skimmers, as you might see on the left. So I've only seen a handful of shimmers. They're not nearly as common in the US because we still use magnetic stripe. And my research will be talking about physical skimmers rather than something like e-skimming, which is performed online. So to explain why this is such a problem, the FBI estimates that skimmers cause up to $1 billion each year from financial institutions and consumers, but there's significant underreporting that goes on in this space. So the industry group that I'm a part of that I'll talk more about later estimates that number to be more around $50 billion each year. So there's actually a big problem with this device or this form of crime where skimming disproportionately affects citizens on government benefits in the US because SNAP EBT cards exclusively have magnetic stripe in all states except California at the moment. So in the payment industry, the blame gets shifted between the banks, the payment processors, the retailers. Everybody points fingers at each other. And some fraud is accepted as the cost of doing business. So a lot of time retailers aren't as motivated to properly deal with these devices or prevent them. As you can see, the FICO debit card and compromise in 2024 graphic. In the bottom right, they have a sort of pie chart showing bank ATMs versus non-bank ATMs. Non-bank ATMs mostly focusing on point-of-sale devices, so the majority of skimmers are placed on point-of-sale devices nowadays. And there's also a few hotspot states, say in the northeast of the US, Texas, and then California has been historically the worst for skimming crime, which has led to them adding chips to their SNAP EBT cards. So to break down how a skimmer attack works, criminals will target outdated payment terminals that have usually minimal surveillance. They'll install the devices in seconds. So I have a demonstration here. This is a Verifone MX915 payment terminal with a skimmer overlay on it. So it's simply an overlay that fits on top of the device, no wiring needed. They can simply place it on in only a few seconds and the device is installed. And so we have demos in the other room showing how you can see the physical ones and zeros on a magnetic stripe card. So this technology was invented in the late 1960s by IBM. All the data on the magnetic stripe is unencrypted. It's very easily read with low-cost hardware, and it's also, like I mentioned, the primary EBT card payment type. So all the information necessary to perform a swipe transaction is stored on the track 2 of the magnetic stripe card, and track 1 stores the cardholder's name in addition to the payment data. So usually skimmers will capture exclusively track 2 from your payment card. Some devices also capture track 1, which includes your name as well. So to break down how skimmers operate, like I mentioned, they'll capture data, so they'll capture your card number, your expiration, and your PIN with this overlaid PIN pad. So on the overlay, not only is there a magnetic sensor to capture your swiped card, that Bluetooth will turn on for 1 to 2 minutes to allow them to dump the data, and then it will turn back off to save power and go back into a sleep state, though it will still capture cards when it's So most of my research has been on point of sale devices, but there are also skimmers for ATMs and gas pumps. So gas pumps and ATMs can be overlays like point of sale skimmers. They can also be deep insert or even internal devices. So as you see in the top right, that is a deep insert skimmer that fits completely within the card slot of the ATM. And in conjunction with that, there'll be either a pin pad overlay or a camera to capture victims entering their pins. Same with gas pumps. In the past, we've seen a lot of internal skimmers where for yourself, I do have these this setup over. So if you want to come see this afterwards, then you can play around with it, feel it for yourself. There are a few different indicators of compromise that really give it away once you know what you're looking for. But again, it is dependent on each terminal. So for Verifone terminals, you can see on the right there is an extra slot added by the skimmer. So that happens when your card swipes through the slot. They add that top slot to look like the real device, but in reality, your card is swiping through that lower slot where the magnetic sensor is placed. Sometimes there's protrusions or alignment issues. Sometimes the terminals might have one or two depending on the device. So they are looking for the presence of multiple magnetic sensor read heads. So if they detect that inductance from passing by the read head, they'll raise an alert and say, hey, there's potentially a skimmer installed. A lot of organizations use security tape, though criminals have oftentimes bought the exact same security tape, or they simply lift it up and place it back on, so that's not a very sound solution. The Target Easy Sweep is one of the most common methods that organizations use to find these devices. It's a little 3D printed or injection molded clamshell that Target will provide the CAD file for free to retailers and banks. And what this allows them to do is to insert into the chip slot of a point of sale terminal and one of the newest devices. Really, it comes down to training your employees on how to find them and doing daily or twice daily checks to remove them. Some terminal security stands that hold onto the terminal will grab the terminal in ways that will prevent overlays from being installed. So that can also be a preventative measure to also help deter criminals from installing devices. So with point of sale skimmers come numerous different circuit boards. We've gotten to the point where I can't fit them all in one slide anymore. There's a few similarities between these families of devices where they'll use, so again, this is a second slide of more devices. We ran out of Greek letters to call them phi, so we've started to resort to other ones. Like if you see, we have Batman and the Flash where the criminals will imprint a logo on them, or we have Robin, which uses a similar microcontroller. We've jumped down the rabbit hole. Too many at this point. So to talk about some of our client objectives, there's a variety of different retail clients and how they treat skimmers and these devices. A lot of the ones that you'll see on social media are the out of sight, out of mind, where they do zero due diligence to prevent these devices from being installed. And when they are found, say in a gas station, the employee will act completely surprised that there was a skimmer installed and say, oh, don't touch that, give me that, or something like that. There's also the family of law enforcement will handle it, where every device that they find simply goes to law enforcement. There's no follow-up on that, and they basically forget about it after it leaves their hands. In the middle, we have some compliance-focused vendors where they're very much focused on the legal aspect to gather the data to disclose data breaches, but they often don't report stolen card numbers. They're just reporting whatever's necessary to